Welcome to our Tuesday evening meeting. We're going to go ahead and get started tonight. So we always start our meetings after call to order with a moment of silence before we do the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'm going to ask you to join me in standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, next we'll have roll call.
Commissioner Jones?
Here.
Commissioner O'Connor?
Present.
Commissioner Lanier?
Present.
Commissioner Ruppert?
Here.
Commissioner Moody?
Present.
Commissioner Kelly?
Present.
Mayor Bliss?
Yes. All right, so next that will take us to our first opportunity for public comment tonight. So let me walk you through the agenda in case this is your first time with us. So we don't have any scheduled public hearings. Okay, so we have two opportunities for public comment tonight. The very first one at the beginning of our meeting is public comment on things that we're actually voting on tonight. So earlier today, we had a whole host of meetings, standing committee meetings, where we discussed issues and we voted on issues, and those are on our agenda tonight. So our first opportunity for public comment is if you want to comment on something specific that we're voting on, and I'll open that up in just a moment. And then at the end of the meeting is a public comment period where you can speak about anything else that's not on our agenda. So a couple of the rules for public comment: we ask that you come up here and that you speak in the microphone. We ask you to write your name over here on the clipboard. We ask you to share your name, the city that you live in, and then for the first opportunity for public comment, if you could specifically cite what item you're referring to, that's helpful for us. And then you're given up to 3 minutes to speak. So up here, there's a little timer. We'll start that timer when you start to speak. You can keep an eye on that. Towards the end, I'll let you know that your time is up. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the first opportunity for public comment, and you're welcome to come forward. And again, this is if you're speaking on something that we're actually voting on tonight. So I'm going to open up that period for public comment. All right. Are you coming up? Okay.
Marvin Yono, Grand Rapids, 800 Monroe. I would like to speak to you about MyVita, Section 9D5. You guys are voting on that today, correct?
We are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I would like to take time to thank you for listening to me speak back in July about the residential buffer. I appreciate the decision you made to improve the ordinance. Your resolve to getting that process right and your willingness to take feedback is commendable. I also appreciate your commitment to local residents and entrepreneurs. It really shows through in the MyVita application that you created. Although the ordinance itself, Section E, Item 3, requires applicants to be pre-qualified by the state, that is not local friendly, as this ordinance was recently adopted and locals only recently became aware of their opportunity. While I appreciate your commitment to local opportunities, I share concerns voiced earlier today by Ms. Susan Schultz that there may not be enough qualified local applicants to warrant this VETA process. The reason being that locals have not had enough time to be vetted by the state. I am aware of several local applicants who are in the process of being vetted, have secured funding, real estate, and legal counsel, but they may not be vetted in time to apply with the city. By the time they are able to apply, they will already have been buffered out by another approved site, by one of the 67 qualified non-local applicants who are ready to apply today. I hope you will consider removing the pre-qualification requirements in order to allow local applicants to take advantage of the great VETA process you have created for the purpose of giving local advantage. I certainly hope MyVita is not wasted. Any questions?
This isn't a time for us to ask questions. It's only a time to listen. Thanks. Others who wish to be heard?
Boy, I hope I'm on the right agenda item. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Leah Bailey. I'm the CEO of Flourish, and I live in Grand Rapids at 601 Michigan, and I believe I'm talking about item 10. Is that correct? I think? Okay.
You share with us.
I'll give it a shot. I hope
Yep.
I'm on the right one. Anyhow, thank you. Flourish is a pre-qualified business in the state of Michigan. We've been pre-qualified for growing, processing, and provisioning of marijuana. We are proposing a co-located facility in Grand Rapids, and we'd really like to ask the city to consider, I guess, a project of the scope of our size, which is $30 million in estimated construction, differently than an individual provisioning center. We're so excited to be part of Grand Rapids. Our founding ownership is from Grand Rapids, so we're really thrilled to be here. We think we can create over 100 positions at this co-located facility. We're committed to being a great neighbor and part of the city. We're going to go ahead with LED lighting, which is a significantly increased cost for this size of facility because it's better for the power supply. We're going to reclaim our water, which will lower our water usage. So we're really excited about doing things that we think will make us a better corporate citizen. But there's two significant challenges the way the MyVita is currently proposed that we think are major issues, and we'd like to talk about them. The first is the local residency. We really, again, understand the importance of that. We support it. We think local residency is critical. We have two founding partners that live, one in Michigan and one in Kent County. However, with a $30 million size commitment just in Grand Rapids, having 25% of that size organization is pretty difficult to come by. So we would not qualify for those because of the 25%, despite the fact that we have people who are from the state and from the area. We'd like to ask you to look at a dollar ownership versus a percentage ownership that would help larger organizations like ours. Secondly, the requirement of the 24% micro LBE participation is not practical, given the $30 million construction project. Our general contractor is going to speak next, Construction Simplified. They're from Grand Rapids. Brent Gibson is the president. We support the effort to have micro LBE. We think it makes so much sense. We'll include it any way we possibly can. But in growing and processing, the equipment and the technology is very specialized. And so there's really no way that 24% of our facility can be accomplished with micro LBE participation. We will commit to doing that, though, in our provisioning center. We think we can do that, and we'll include micro LBE, easy to say, right? Businesses any way we possibly can in this organization. We've already invested $1 million in the property in Grand Rapids, so we're committed to being here. We're looking forward to being part of the city, and we really hope that you'll help us bring our project to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, others who wish to be heard?
Good evening. Brent Gibson, proud West Side resident, 923 Brownwood. As Leah introduced me, President, Construction Simplified. I would like to say I am a micro LBE firm. I started my firm 4 years ago after being at a large West Michigan firm. I've been very successful in our market conditions and our skill sets. We've been honored to work with the Flourish team for the past 6 months on prepping and organizing this project. And I just really wanted to hit home, I guess, on the fact of the 24% micro LBE requirement. I am 100% supporter of small business. I am one. This means a lot to me and my family and my business. But first, let's understand what the Flourish project is in terms of the construction. It's a $30 million construction project, 100,000 square feet, potentially upwards of 2 years to build out. That is a huge economic impact for a size project that large. Contains a ton of specialty and technical equipment. Nearly 99% of the costs are interior construction. That's very little site work, and this plays into a point here later on. Site work may be valued at most $250,000 of the 30. The construction team would be made up of 25 to 30 different subcontractors, all of which would be local. I could make that commitment to that, all of which firms you would see every day in West Michigan building every project we have going vertical right now. However, I believe all of these points strongly meet and exceed the City Commission policy goal 2.2 to maximize the local impact. The challenge, 24% of $30 million, follow my math here, is $7.2 million. If you take a normal rule of thumb in construction, that's $3.6 million in labor alone. That equates to 65,000 man-hours of labor that we would expect to come from micro LBE firms. However, on the City of Grand Rapids LBE site, as of December 2018, there are 20 firms listed currently registered as micro LBE. Of those 20, 7 typical trade categories are made up. 7. We need 25 to 30. There are 6 excavators, 4 site concrete guys, which is 10 of the 20, which is 50%. We have $250,000 of estimated work on the outside. How do we solve it? The solution, it's not to get rid of micro LBE, it's to create a minimum dollar amount, whether that's $100, $200, $1 million, put something reasonable, or a 24%, keep to 24%, applicable to the size of the construction project. The lesser of the two. If you're building a 100,000 square foot or $100,000 facility, 24% might make more sense than if you're building a $30 million facility. And then also require the applicant to work with a process and live by that process. We do this every day in city contracting and everything else, so follow it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for your input. All right, others wish to be heard?
Good evening. Aaron Smith from Muskegon, Michigan. And I just wanted to touch on the pre-qualification aspect as well. A couple things I'm sure many of you are aware of. I'll just touch on it briefly. That the state of Michigan currently has a two-step process for marijuana licenses. The pre-qualification, which requires an extensive background check of every individual that holds ownership in any entity to operate a state-certified facility, personal history of all business activity, financial disclosures of every bank account and every transaction, as well as capitalization requirements that must be attested by a licensed CPA. Some of the requirements are very large, and the reason I bring this point up is even though I understand that a lot of individuals would like to potentially operate a facility in Grand Rapids, the truth of the matter is many of them will not be able to, just based on what is required from the state. And I think it only makes sense that the city uses the state's background checks and all the process they're going through as another filter for the city. Even though there had been a very long backlog in the state pre-qualification application process, the issue's been addressed by the state as they've increased the number of personnel for the vetting process, and this in turn has decreased the bottleneck and is speeding up the process that is getting more in line with the city's March tentative date for applications. Some of the negative consequences of removing pre-qual is the amount of time that will be required by opening the door to everyone, in our opinion, will increase applications substantially. There are many locations that are viable based on all the zoning requirements from the city, but truthfully do not make sense for a retail location. Individuals and groups that own property and buildings that have the potential for a provisioning center will apply without being fully and truthfully prepared to operate a retail facility. They will obtain special land use permit, effectively restricting real individuals who would like to open a retail facility, effectively limiting the number of retail locations in Grand Rapids. There will also be a large number of individuals who are able to receive license that will not pass this requirement from the state. As you know, the city will have then issued a license to a group that cannot use it. The main thing I want to touch on here is that there's value in a license, whether you operate a facility or not. And we feel that there's a lot of real estate speculation that's going on with individuals that truly do not intend to use the license for what the city and the state would like it used for. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, others wish to be heard?
Hi, good evening. Honorable Mayor Bliss, City Commissioners, my name is Matt Hoffman. I'm a resident of Grand Rapids, and I'd like to talk about the my Vita. And so, believe it or not, I didn't come here to make comment. I just came here to listen. I don't think that it's ever happened. I've just came and listened, and that won't be the exception tonight. So, sitting over there listening to the lady in the back discuss a $30 million investment, as I'm sure you guys are familiar, my business is connecting job seekers with cannabis employers. And a facility of that technological sophistication and that size would be a significant number of people employed in the greater Grand Rapids area, which I know is a priority of this body, and that's something that we can happily do. My concern is that I think that there are unfair hurdles in place disadvantaging the people that would probably be and apparently are leaders in the industry. I think that there should be points in merit awarded to entities that are recycling water and that are making the very expensive choice up front to invest in LED technology. And the idea that grows are viewed the same by the city as dispensaries and processing centers is something that I think that we should re-examine as well. My vested interest in this is putting Grand Rapidians to work. And so by my estimation, they could employ about 100 people, which is a nice size impact on our community, especially when we think about the skills that can be developed and translated into small business ownership and equity development in our community later as the competencies are brought to bear through working underneath the tutelage of a company that has that caliber of experience. And so I would recommend to this body that we re-examine the VITA and award points based on technological advancements based on the amount of money they would have to outlay to achieve those goals, because they are removing a burden on our systems by making that commitment to reducing their energy consumptions. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, others who wish to be heard?
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor, City Attorney, City Clerk. My name is Eric Foster. I live in Okemos, Michigan. I wanted to just make a couple of points as it relates to the pre-qualification approval versus proof of submission. Right now with the state, 32% of the people that have received Step 1 approval at the state level have been denied Step 2 approval. So statistically speaking, it's not a guarantee that Step 1 approval ensures Step 2 approval. Secondarily, 38% of those that have went for Step 1 have been denied. So you only have a 6% difference between the denials at Step 1 and the denials at Step 2. There's a number of other communities, and 8 that I can speak to directly, such as Albion, Battle Creek, Kalamazoo, and others that have clawback provisions, wherein that when you approve the provisioning center or the licensee through a land use process, you have the ability to claw back in some communities as short as 120 days if they haven't either provided proof of licensing or substantial activity towards the development of their facility, and or they can ask for an extension up to 6 months, depending on the community. So the protection of giving an approval and being tie-barred to someone tying up a piece of land, you have options. There's other communities right now that have that in their MMFLA ordinance. The second thing is the time it takes to actually get through the state process. Right now, when you apply for your pre-qual, you get what's called an ERGA number. That's your queue number. Right now, there are 42% of the people that applied before the January 19th, 2018 meeting that have not gotten their first pre-qual hearing, but they're still working through the process. The average time that it takes for an applicant to go through the process to get to their first hearing from submission is 5 months, 3 weeks on average. And then the amount of time that it takes to get from hearing 1 to hearing 2 is 3 months and 2 weeks on average. It's not that the applicants aren't trying to work through the process, but I can speak to a direct example of working with a client. We submitted their application in August. We just got our application specialist last week. We've been asking, pressing, and we just got the application specialist. So that's a bureaucratic issue that hopefully will be addressed in time, but isn't addressed right now. And you have a lot of good people in the queue that are waiting to get, or have people advocating, pushing, but you have to go through the bureaucratic process. So just take that into consideration. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right, anyone else who wishes to be heard? Yep, come on up, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Iva Whitty. I live at 1250 Mayfield Avenue Northeast here in the city of Grand Rapids. And I rode up on the elevator with the mayor today. Rah for me. The only reason I'm here tonight is I heard this on the news that they were having a city council meeting on the marijuana issue. I will tell you, I voted against it. I think it's a horrible thing that the state of Michigan even went for it. What I am most interested in at this time, because my side didn't win, is how are you going to determine who, what, where, and when the sale of marijuana will be held in this community? Just last week, I found out that a store that had been recently remodeled on Leonard and Ball was probably going to be a pot house. I walked in because they had some new bright lights on the windows. I wanted to see what's 2 blocks from my house, right next to my gas station. And the first part that was there was all the drug paraphernalia that one would think they would need if they wanted to partake in lots of that type of activity, which I think is a way of losing your soul. People lose their consciousness. their feelings, their ability to be decent human beings with the use of marijuana. The other half of the store, which has not been furnished, but you could see, was totally open, all ready to be used for another purpose, is what I could contend. I asked the person that was in charge, will they be selling marijuana here? And she said, I don't know. She says the person that owns this property has 2 liquor stores in Wyoming. So that, of course, put my antenna right up. I don't care if people drink. It's all right. And you can get sober from after having some alcohol, but the brain cells of human beings, especially young people, are really, really affected. So, that's all I've got to say. I'm well prepared. I had 10 minutes to get down here. I had to have my son drive me because I was just too mad to think about it. So, will you be addressing that tonight? Has it been addressed? How you will determine who, what, where, and when pot will be sold? I see my time's
Yeah,
up.
thank you, Iva. And I'll have Suzanne Schultz, or we'll have city staff point you in the right direction to provide you with all the information of what's in the ordinance. So, all right, anyone else who wishes to be heard on items that we're voting on tonight?
Hello, my name is Von Ruff. I just came up because I wanted to comment on what she just went on.
Okay, but I'm going to ask you to comment on something we're voting on.
You guys are voting on
okay?
what she's commenting on.
Well, we
just
haven't
commenting,
voted
right?
yet, but you have to tell us what you are referring to.
Whatever to like the marijuana, whatever that is.
Okay.
That's what
Okay.
I'm talking about.
All right.
Can I get my extra 6 minutes that I just lost?
We'll restart it.
Can I?
But I
Thank
want
you,
it to be
thank you.
clear, this is for
All right, I'm
items we're
gonna step
voting
back.
on.
I'm going
Okay.
to start over.
Okay, come on up.
All right, so my name is Von Ruff of the Heartside community. I'm a person with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I had a medical marijuana card for over about 4 years now, maybe 5. I believe that the people in my community, well, my old community, Holland, they would probably say that medical marijuana has probably been my best friend. Actually, it's been helping me out with my issues a lot. I actually think that it's widened my thinking, more activities. It calms me down a lot. It relaxes me. It keeps me from stressing. Personally, I would rather have a marijuana shop 2 blocks than having some drugs like needles in a parking lot where kids could get it and poke themselves, or alcohol bottles or Newports with nicotine. I mean, we could go on and on about how much stuff is legal, illegal, that harms the community. I'm sure if you give a crackhead some crack, they're gonna go rob a bank or break into a building to get their high. Give a guy some weed, he's gonna sit down and eat all day. So what do you mean? I'd rather get high and eat all day and get fat. I mean, we're in America. We got the biggest obese country in the world. Like, we like to eat, so weed and eating, that's the main key. I really believe, like, we have, like, a lot of people, a lot of places to go to get marijuana. I'd rather get marijuana here in Grand Rapids than all the way in Lansing, Detroit, or lovely Pearl West in Zeeland, Michigan. Like, Grand Rapids needs their own dispensary. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. All right, others wish to be heard?
Hi, how you
Hi.
doing? I'm Charles Bronkema. I wanted to voice my opinion on the need for a pre-approval through the state. I think it's very important because if you don't do that, you're going to have a lot of real estate speculation. You're going to have people come in here, apply to the city, they're going to pay you your $5,000. You're going to have to go through all that work. You're going to, tally them up and make sure there's not too many. You're going to award this license. And then that person is going to turn around and flip that property for 4 times the amount that they paid for it. And that person might not get approved. The next person might not get approved. So they're going to have to come back to you. And it's going to just create a lot more work, a lot more headaches for you guys. And you guys are going to have to go through the whole process again. If one property owner doesn't get through or the property doesn't get through, you're going to have to open up the zoning. And then you're going to have people flooding the gates, trying to get that other option within 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet of another one. And it's really just going to waste a lot of your guys' time. And actually, a lot of people around that are going to kind of they're kind of going to use your guys just to get the license. They might be happy, familiar face, good business guy, but in the end, they're in this with money. So they're going to quadruple their profits. So I just wanted to voice my favor of requiring the pre-qual. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else who wishes to be heard? Hi.
Good evening. My name is Mike Zaney. I spoke with you about a month ago in regards to the pre-qualification. I wanted to touch base on the new VITA process, as well as it kind of goes hand in hand with that pre-qualification. The city of Grand Rapids has really, especially in the past month, obviously shown that they want to take a real local approach, which is commendable. I really think that it's important that we're going to have, local businesses, local entrepreneurs, citizens be able to open up businesses on their own. I talked to you guys before. The issue that there is, if I'm not 100% sure, but the last I knew, there's no resident in the city of Grand Rapids that does have a pre-qualification. I may be wrong. If there is, maybe it's 1 or 2 people. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty confident in that statement. So with that, not removing that obviously is going to be an issue for the local people. A lot of the VITA process itself is based, the merit is based on somebody applying that's local here to Grand Rapids. So we're going to have a requirement for the VITA process to get more points is basically, hey, you live here in Grand Rapids, but problem is if you're not qualified through or pre-qualified to the state, you can't do any work here. So they kind of contradict each other, okay? Me personally, I've worked countless hours since this ordinance became approved about 6 months ago. Day and night, we hit the streets, we put all this money into, getting real estate, you got to get counsel, you got to, get all your ducks in a row, and that costs money. There is an issue with a lot of people saying there's going to be land speculation, but the thing is with it, you have to pay money out anyways, okay? So let's take things seriously here. A lot of the people that are going to be against, getting rid of the pre-qualification, these are people that don't live here, okay? And we know it's a hard fight back and forth. So, I've worked hard. It's hard to get investors. It's hard to get counsel. It's hard to get properties, especially everybody knows what's going on with trying to secure real estate right now. And as a local person, I'm not approved through the state, but I can meet the qualifications. I just don't have the pre-qualifications personally myself. But if you don't amend this ordinance, me personally as a local person here, I cannot break into this industry. Another issue I have with the VITA process and things I've heard with the getting rid of the pre-qualification is the issue of caseload. I understand that it's going to be busy. But we only have one chance to get this right. So if the Planning Commission, needs to put a little more money into making sure that we, give everybody the opportunity, that would be appreciated. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else who wishes to be heard? Hi, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tuare Sims. I am a local resident, homeowner, ancillary business owner in the cannabis industry. I moved away from Grand Rapids over probably about 12 years ago. Got sick of Atlanta, got online, Googled what was the largest industry going on in Michigan, cannabis everywhere. I decided to move home 3 months later. I've been home 3 years now and been actively involved, but on the social justice side. I'm not sure if this has even been mentioned, but please consider in the pre-qualifications that you are qualifying people that are taking the social justice side as far as how it has affected blacks and brown people all across the nation. It's very serious. I know Grand Rapids is its own little cove, but if anyone has looked into the cannabis industry, this is big things going on. I have spoken in DC during the National Black Congress week on it. It's going on. I've been to Cali. I've been everywhere speaking about it. I'm really happy that it is legal rec now. I did vote for it. But in knowing the truth of the law and how it's affected every other community across the nation, when rec goes legal, so do arrests for black people and brown people. So I look forward to working with every single one of you. My third ward commissioners, I am very excited that it's legal and that we can get some communications going on, because there's many many benefits in it that Black and brown people can take part in, even if you don't have $1 million and a whole team to represent you. I look forward to working with anybody in the community that is interested in learning. I am for women. I am for minorities in this industry. There's a place for us. And any company that's here that is interested in tapping into that side, and you really want to put if you've used the term that you represent women and people of color in this industry, get with me. Let's work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, anyone else who wishes to be heard on items that we're voting on tonight? Okay, anyone else?
I'm Martha Cooper. Just to speak to this, and I'm not even going to use the 3 minutes. I really appreciated what the last person said. I have not followed this issue because my head has been all about housing. There's a lot of really important issues. When it comes to this issue, I have not gone through the paperwork. I don't know what the qualifications are, but I can really appreciate, I've seen some states that have legalized it. And when they were handing out and even I think Canada, there is some issues about restoring some justice behind the legalization and for sale of marijuana. I would really hate to have people that have had charges brought in our drug war to be excluded from any opportunities that are around this. You know, I hear a lot of things about developers coming in and new business. I always hear about how there are going to be jobs. Well, I'm going to keep saying it. Jobs here need to pay rents that are here. That's always going to be my line. So you're bringing jobs. Does that job afford a place to live? But seriously, there are some wrongs that have been happening here for so long. And if we're going to have qualifications that continue to do wrong and not restore some of the economic damage that our drug war has done, I want to hold you all accountable to that.
Thank you. Oh, no clapping. Sorry, please, please. We want to make sure that, and the reason I say that, one, it's one of our rules. I just want to make sure it's a really safe place for people to speak regardless of their opinion. And we want to make sure that, okay, thanks. All right, anyone else? Oh, okay. Hope he's okay.
Hi,
Hi,
Dwayne
welcome.
DeRue,
Hi, Dwayne.
600 Blocker Crescent. Switching gears to the Housing Now recommendations. I thank you for slowing down the process for these last few recommendations. It's helpful to see on the PDFs what items will be needing more work, what's going to go into the master plan, so that as a resident, that's very helpful to see, that not everything just clears right on through that we spoke so many times to deal with. The early part of your afternoon session of your strategic planning workshop discussed relationships as it relates to residents and city government. That involves responsiveness, communication, perceptions, and intentions. A neighborhood's fabric is woven together by generations of relationship. I'm a 27-year homeowner. My neighbor is a third generation in her home. And she's fearful of what the new development's going to bring because we fall within that 500-foot strip of allowance that seems to be at this point. So the by right, the 500-foot limit for zero lot structures, boundary of the resident government, it pushes that relationship a little too far as I'm concerned, because it can be anywhere within a 60% location in our neighborhood as far as all of those restrictions go. So it says right now it's for vacant lots, but when is that going to change? Is it always going to, because right now there might not be that many vacant lots, but for the future, who knows? So it starts to feel like you've got a perfectly good sweater and you start kind of tugging, away at the fabric of it, and you just keep pulling and pulling and pulling at it. It's like, when do you stop? And that's, as a resident, that's kind of what we're kind of curious of and concerned about. And from that relational standpoint, as far as I've seen the Planning Commission, my personal view of them is they play fast and loose with their own ordinances. I've seen 3 different times where They've waived 100% parking requirements for businesses that have now moved into the neighborhood. And so when and especially even this 500-foot thing came about very loosey-goosey and suddenly became ordinance. And so that it's very concerning on all of those standpoints. And so I'm asking that the 500-foot would be struck back to 100-foot, be more reasonable, and because otherwise what we're going to wind up with is this kind of odd dotting of unrelated structures throughout a neighborhood. So just think again about the relationship aspect of things, and that it takes much more time to build a relationship than it does to tear it down.
Thank you. Thank you,
So,
Dwayne.
think about the neighbors in that respect. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it. All right. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close that public comment period, and we will move on to our next item, and this is approval of our minutes from just last week on November 27th. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Support.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next that will take us to petitions and communications, and we have 3 items tonight.
The first one is a communication received from Kimberly Sahili regarding a pre-qualification recommendation for the medical marijuana ordinance.
That is received and filed.
The second one is a communication received from Richard Dalrymple expressing opposition to increased water and sewer rates.
That's received and filed.
And communication received from Joseph Lucas expressing opposition to the removal of a pre-qualification requirement for the medical marijuana zoning changes.
And that is also received and filed. All right, next that will take us to reports of city officers.
First one is the comptroller's report for the period of November 15, 2018 through November 21, 2018, in the amount of $6,573,143.10.
That's received and filed.
Treasurer's report for the period of November 13, 2018 through November 23, 2018.
That's received and filed.
And from the city clerk, submitted copies of the General Retirement System Annual Actuarial Valuation for the period year ending June 30th, 2018.
And that is also received and filed. All right, next that will take us to our consent agenda, and these are items that we voted on earlier, and they were supported unanimously, so with one voice vote tonight, we'll adopt those. Can I get a motion?
Moved.
Support. All right, Commissioner,
Mayor,
any
I'd like to
questions?
make a motion to pull one of the items from the agenda.
All right, and which
D3?
one is that? 3?
D3.
D3. All right. Is there support to pull D3?
Support.
I'm going to have support. All those in favor of pulling D3 from the agenda, from the consent agenda, say aye.
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 All right. All right, so we'll pull that. We'll move that to items removed from consent. Any other questions or comments? Are- Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Do I need to voice vote that? So who all agrees, raise your hand, please, with removing item D3 from consent? Raise your hand. Okay, 4 votes. All right. So that will move that down to items removed from consent. Any other comments about items that are on consent? All right, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, that will take us to items removed from consent, and that is resolution to consider the zoning ordinance text amendments relative to medical marijuana. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, so removed from consent, we had quite a bit of conversation about this, so I will open it up for additional discussion.
So, Mayor, this one was removed from consent. Can you share what reason it was removed from consent?
The one that you just removed?
No, I have mines, but there is already one on here that, are you reviewing that one first? Or the ordinance? Because there's the Vita, the My Vita is its own item that's already removed.
That one's removed
And
because
then-
we modified it from this morning's posted agenda item.
Yes.
so.
Right, so which item are we discussing now? The
we-
My
we
Vita?
can
or
start,
we-
no, let's start with the one that you pulled.
Okay, great. So I'm pulling this item because I do want to review the section in the ordinance that took some of the language that was originally in the My Vita and took it from the My Vita and put it into the ordinance itself. And we didn't have much discussion about this, and so I just want to make sure that we're all clear. We've also heard public comment regarding this item. This is the pre-qual item. And we had some strong conversation about pre-qualifications in the past, and I just want to make sure that we all are having that discussion now that it's in the ordinance.
Yeah, maybe I'll have Suzanne come up and speak to this. We touched on it this morning. Commissioners, you may have recalled it was in the agenda packet. There was a lengthy conversation about this item at the Planning Commission with the recommendation that pre-qualification be put in the ordinance for a number of reasons. And so in the packet that we had over the weekend to review before this morning's conversation, you saw a couple revisions, including the red line. And then when the question was asked this morning about it not being in the MyVita, and Suzanne explained because it was recommended that was back in the ordinance. Maybe you can give a little bit more background on that and answer any questions that commissioners have about it.
That was a good summary. Yeah, we've had a lot of debate. I mean, this is probably one of the items that you've heard from about the most. So the Planning Commission did discuss it quite at length. They heard testimony both for and against, and they were considering kind of the length of time and the probability of success given the failure rate at the state for the prequal. And they were very concerned about hearing requests that would not come to fruition had applicants not being able to pass. So their recommendation, they debated quite a bit and were kind of on the fence about it and debated and decided as a body to recommend that the pre-qualification remain in the ordinance because of that, because they were recognizing the complications it would cause for them as a body when they heard requests. If they granted them, then once you have the separation distance go into effect, then other applicants wouldn't be afforded that opportunity to have a request that could be viable.
So Suzanne, I didn't recall it being in the ordinance originally. I remember it being in the MyVita, but I didn't remember it, you know, we've kind of talked about this for a long time, so maybe I'm just not remembering when, but.
Yeah, so the history of it, it's been in the ordinance.
Okay.
And then you had your work session as a body, and we had a lot of discussion about it then. And as a result of the discussion from your work session from the City Commission, we had initially proposed taking it out of the ordinance and putting it into the MyVita. And then after your discussion, it went to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission decided to keep it in, and then that's what's being proposed to you tonight.
And Suzanne, some of the comments about length of time and the concern that people have voiced about the backlog at the state. Can you elaborate? I know you're active at the state level on this, and that there has been adjustments made at the state level to expedite the process. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think that was one of the concerns around this body is, does that prevent those who are maybe just submitting an application now from getting prepared? So can you speak to that? Because I think, you know, I want to understand the underlying concern, and we want to make sure people locally have access to the opportunity. And I think some of the feedback we heard was, well, it's taking so long at the state. That's where the problem lies. And I think we wrestled with that a little bit, and I know the Planning Commission wrestled with that as well as they looked at the pros and cons of including it in the ordinance.
Yeah, so Lara has been hiring staff, as you just heard Mr. Foster say. They just had their staff person appointed. So I do sit on the Medical Marijuana Advisory Panel, which provides for rulemaking for the board that approves for medical marijuana. We are in the process of operations and looking at what the rules are and trying to get those changed. The issue right now is state law. When they initially wrote it, they focused on gaming rather than liquor when they initially made their rules. And so one of the challenges is the background checks for every single person that could be any possible investor, even with a 1% interest in that. So they are working to change that law in addition to having additional staff. So they are, according to the director of LARA, who's overseeing the licensing process, he anticipates that by March that they would be through some of their backlog.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions about this?
Well, I just have a comment or a thought, because, you know, I'm wondering the same thing, and I see it in there. I see the benefit of being in the ordinance. I see the benefit of being in the MyVita. You know, if what Eric Foster shared with us, that the average time to get a prequal is 5 months and 3 weeks, if we approve this today as is, the very first application that we're accepting for growers, processors, and provisioning centers is March 4th, which is 4 months from now. So if somebody doesn't have their application in now, extending this a week, a month or two is not going to help them. And so I feel like we've got 4-month window here before they can even submit an application as is. So I think, at least at this point, I lean toward leaving it what we approved this morning, but because we've got 4 more months before we're going to even accept applications. So my question is that enough time for the local folks to get that pre-qualification or not? I don't know the answer to that, but I would hope that they have their application in by now.
Well, you approved the ordinance in July,
Right.
right? So then you did the moratorium, and now you have the ordinance before you.
Right. So I would hope that if they don't have their application in by now, I don't know if it's giving them any more of an advantage to kick it further down the road, but.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, and I just want to, I'm in favor of leaving it in the ordinance. I just, I did some quick math based on, again, Mr. Foster's numbers about the 32% getting denied at step 2 and 38% getting denied at step 1. So that means out of 100 people that apply, 42 of that 100 actually get to the point that they get through step 2 of qualification, which means that if pre-qualification is not a factor for determination about going to planning, that means someone could go through, tie up planning staff resources, planning commission resources, tie up a property, could take 5 months and 3 weeks, and then if they get denied, it's excluded every other applicant in the neighborhood or in the vicinity from actually applying for eventual use. So I think that's the argument to very much leave it in the.
And it's a hard one. I think we've wrestled with this multiple times. And so let me get a sense of where the mind of the commission is. I think there's reasons on both sides. I think, Commissioner, I'm with you. I think the reasons to keep it in outweigh, and I think that's why the Planning Commission landed on that as well and voted in support of putting it back and having it in the ordinance. So I'm going to call the question to just get a sense where the commission is on this.
Mayor, I have a question to ask. What's the advantage of local? Because when we've been talking about this ordinance, one of the primary things that we've talked about consistently is making sure that people who are residents, who live locally, have some form of preference, if that's the right word. So what's the advantage of those who are local with having this here as opposed to having it in the VITA? Because if that's what we're saying, and this kind of goes back to an earlier conversation we were having, when we say things, we have to mean what it is that we're saying. And then we have to put action into what it is we're saying. And if we're favoring local people and local businesses, how does having this in the policy benefit them? That's my question.
Dan, I'll let you speak to that. the MyVita is different. It's about tiering up and prioritizing applications. And so do you want to speak to the difference?
I would
And
say.
if it doesn't, it just doesn't. But I'm just asking, how does it, if it does?
I think the benefit to not having it in the VITA is that if you had pre-qual, if you were a company and you had pre-qual already, then you'd automatically get a point in the VITA. The VITA is designed to promote local, and so you don't have that, there's not that additional point that somebody from the outside would get. In the VITA, you get more points for being a local resident. So it's just a straight ordinance requirement, which applies to everyone, but if you are a larger company and you have pre-qual, you don't get the extra point that would, when you'd be competing against local residents in the VITA. So I think it actually benefits local.
And then in the ordinance, how does having it in the ordinance benefit those who are local?
It's neutral, I would say, because it's a simple ordinance requirement that if someone has gone through the process at the state level, the state is evaluating the ability of the applicant to be able to run the marijuana business. So they're vetting those individuals to determine level of success of the industry, but that's not something that we can do anyway because we can't license the individual, we're licensing the facility.
But if the issue is, the concern that's being brought to our attention is that those who are local may not have had the same advantage because they may not have been aware of the industry and the impact it was going to have locally here in the city until later in the game. So if that's the concern, if we're trying to address the concern by removing it from the ordinance, why wouldn't that be a preferred, why wouldn't you see that as being a preference for local as opposed to being neutral. And I'm really trying to understand, because I see it as, and I've been saying this consistently, that we need to definitely not have the pre-qual because we have individuals who weren't, privy to what this meant for this city until recently.
Right. And there will be some. I mean, I think there will be all types of people who are just becoming aware of what this means and understanding the timelines for it. But I think that if the VITA still gives you an extra point, the application process, if it's not in the ordinance, would open it up to anyone to apply, whether or not they're going to be successful. I think if someone's gone through the pre-qual requirement, then they're going to have a greater likelihood of success in being a business person. I think this, because of the local partnership that is created by the VITA, that you may see people who have a pre-qual partnering with local interests more than you would have had otherwise. I think you're going to see more partnerships created because they want those points and they want the VITA. They want to be on the Planning Commission agenda, but they're going to have to offer ownership opportunities because you have to be an owner in the business as part of the VITA process. We had that 25% owner requirement. You did hear the comments about dollars versus percentage, but that's what you currently have in the VITA.
So I'd like to make a motion to modify the existing ordinance to remove the pre-qual requirement.
Okay. Is there support for that amendment?
Support.
All right, so that's the amendment on the table. Any additional questions about that? All right, all those in favor of removing the pre-qual out of the ordinance, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, so it fails. So back to the motion at hand, which is the resolution to consider the zoning ordinance text amendments. Commissioner Repart, did you have any final questions?
I just wanted to respond to Sunita because I'm trying to figure out how to make this work for local. And again, I'm not 100% certain, but my hope is that in the next 4 months, we'll see those pre-quals happen for the local people who've already submitted their applications. And then it will absolutely benefit them.
Through the MyVita.
Through the MyVita.
But isn't that a gamble, Commissioner? I mean, if we don't know, and we're no offense to Eric, but we're using a public comment to base our decision for businesses that are potentially opening up in our city.
Sure.
We know for sure that people were not aware. We know for sure that they were behind a number of people who were privy to this industry. So to protect them, we should put means in place in our ordinance to make sure that we're doing exactly what we say we want to do.
Okay, so
which is, have preference for local.
I'm
sorry,
back the-
Mayor, respectfully, when we're having a conversation, we're having a conversation about an agenda item. So what I don't want is to be censored from being able to
Not
have
censoring.
a conversation about an agenda item that's on our agenda. So respectfully, please don't cut us off from having the conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions or comments?
I've got a question.
Commissioner, thank you.
Okay. From the words of Denzel Washington, explain this to me like I'm a 7-year-old. We passed the language, or we made the decision in July of 2018, correct?
Yes.
It's fair to say that those who are interested or who are interested in being part of this industry, even before then, would actually put in motion the application process to be pre-qualified. Is that a fair assumption that if you're serious about it, you're going to move forward with it, or maybe you're not going to move forward with it because what's the price tag on it again?
The state application license for phase part 1, the pre-qual, is $6,000.
$6,000. So those who were interested in being in the industry would write a check for $6,000. They would submit their application for pre-qualification, correct? And we're being told that the backlog is about how many months?
As of to date.
6 months.
I think it's less than that now.
Okay.
But maybe even back up more than that, Commissioner Jones, because the state put in the rules last year.
The LARA rules became effective December 15th, 2017.
Yes.
Right. So Just the reason that I voted no on not removing, the prequal is because what I'm learning and what I seem to understand about this is, it is resource intensive. So there's the need for whomever is looking to engage in this business to have necessary resources, or at least have a team in place to have the necessary resources to be able to engage in this industry. And so I almost feel as if, those who have, I guess, moved in advance, or when it was clear that we were moving in the direction in Grand Rapids to make this a reality around medical marijuana, they made the decision to go forward and to apply for the license for pre-qualification, understanding that there was going to be a backlog, but at least it puts them in the pipeline and in the position to hopefully be approved, right? And again, I'm understanding this business, this industry is, again, as being something that requires a lot of financial resources. I'm also one who has been very outspoken about historically how it's been something that, has injured black and brown people, in particular black folks. And it seems now that that's the very audience or the very population that may not be in a position to benefit from it based on the fact that it's so cash intensive. I don't know how we, I don't know if we're in a position to, I don't know if we're in a position to try to right that wrong. And I think that one of the ways in which we can, I guess, begin the process of trying to right some of those wrongs, I think we've tried to do that to the best of our ability with what we have with the MyVita. And so, case in point, I can understand why there would be pushback perhaps about the micro LBE participation, but this is something that speaks to the potential of an existing LBE, hopefully being able to participate and benefit from the industry. And so, although it may come across as being unfair, I got a laundry list of all the other things that have been unfair historically with regards to people of color in this industry. We don't have time this evening to go into that, and so I'll end by saying that I think that we have to continue to work at this and try to do all that we can with the power that we have to try to make this to remove as many barriers as we possibly can for people of color who want to enter into this industry to do so. But I don't think we're in a position to totally, turn the rules upside down and kind of change what seems to be required to enter into the business. We don't have that capacity, so.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner. I think that summarizes some of the challenges we've had. Any final comments or questions? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the resolution for the zoning ordinance text amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay. Okay, it carries. All right, next that will take us to our second item that is off consent, and this is the resolution approving the City Commission policy on MyVita, and this is off consent because there was an amendment and a revision made this morning during Committee of the Whole. So can I get a motion?
Moved.
Support.
All right, Commissioner O'Connor, you made the amendment. You want to speak to this?
Yeah, I made an amendment to the local economic portion of this, adding one additional point into the process, which relates to the commitment to hire a minimum of 30 employees who work more than 30 hours per week. I think a lot of this comes back to the idea of creating jobs in Grand Rapids, and the fact that, in almost any other circumstance, if this was not a marijuana-related business, we would celebrate the opportunity to have a business in Grand Rapids that created 30 new jobs that didn't previously exist. And so singling out this industry as one that we would celebrate and support creating that income tax, creating those new jobs. And then, again, I think it was important to have those be 30-hour plus per week jobs to indicate that it's full-time employment, that we're not creating, part-time jobs. These are FTE type positions that would come with benefits and healthcare and other things like that. So that was important to add that in.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any other comments? All right, I'll call the question on this. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next up will take us to our ordinances to be adopted, and we have one ordinance before us tonight.
Ordinance amending Section 1 of the Budget Ordinance 2018-35 for fiscal year 2019, Amendment Number 10.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support. All right, Commissioner Jones, our Chair of Fiscal, you want to tell us about this?
Yes, we had a number, we had about 6 items on the agenda on this morning in fiscal and with the budget ordinance, and there was no change to the, I'm kind of lost here because I don't have my
Your notes?
notes were not cited.
So we had a number of items. One was Southtown SID
Yep,
and developer deposit for 501 Eastern, I believe.
that is correct. There was also some reimbursements from, to the engineering department, and, thank you, and that was the gist of it, but most importantly, there was no change to the contingent balance. That's it. Sorry about that.
All right, no, that's okay. Yep. Oh, right here. Okay, and is this roll call?
Yes.
Okay, it's roll call vote tonight, so I'll turn to our clerk.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Lumiere?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connor?
Yes.
Commissioner Repart?
Yes.
Commissioner Moody?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Bliss?
Yes. And can I get a motion to give this immediate effect?
So moved.
Support.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? It carries. All right, Commissioners, we have no resolutions before us tonight and no scheduled public hearings, so that will quickly take us to public comment period. So if you are here tonight to speak about anything else that is on your heart and mind, now is an opportunity to come forward. Again, our same rules apply. We ask that you share your name, the city that you live in, and we'll give you up to 3 minutes to speak. So, Mr. Davis?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Commissioners. My name is David Davis. I live here in the city on Front Avenue. And I've been promoting this Clean City program. We're making a little bit of progress, not quite as fast as I'd like, but I have a meeting with Mr. Santos on next Monday, and he has some things that we want to discuss, and we'll be moving forward on that. In support of my ideas of cleaning up the city, about 3 weeks ago, I was riding on Sewage Street. I rode from 11th Street all the way to Leonard. I had to stop 5 times on my bike to pick up trash out of the bike lane. One piece was so big that you would have had to ride around it in the traffic lane to get around it, which would have been a traffic hazard. And this is one of the reasons I'm promoting this Clean Up Our City. We should be proud of our city and keep it clean. And that. Another thing I'm finding is, I don't know about the regulations on these wreckers, but a lot of times there's traffic accidents and parts of the car are being left in the street. In my day, there was time that a record company, when they came out and picked up a car, they cleaned up the trash, all the broken parts and all that. Is this still in effect or is it not? If it is, if it isn't, it should be, because these record companies are paid well and they can do their job and do it properly. And that. And I listened intently about this marijuana thing, and I'd like to state my opinion on it. I find it appalling that so many people in our city, our state, and our country find it approved behavior to smoke marijuana and lose control of themselves. And that's exactly what it is. It's a escape from reality. And when you escape from reality, you cannot function the way you need to as a citizen, as a person, or any other part of your society. So I'm not in favor of it. And I know a big part of this comes from our pseudoscientists, psychiatrists. They seem to think it's more important to give somebody an escape from reality than it is to help them solve their problems. And I think the people of this country have to wake up to reality and find out that an escape from reality is not going to do them any good because they're going to continue to escape from reality. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Davis. All right, others wish to be heard?
Hello, my name is LaDonna Norman, and I'm here to continue to talk about the housing crisis in Grand Rapids. And I know Homes for All has been pretty active with the city, but Homes for All doesn't directly see the effects of the gentrification with the children. I think that it is crucial when they are young and developing for children to be able to learn and play and develop normally. And with the gentrification and putting families in one-room hotels, they are not developing correctly. And they're going to school, they're out of control. There's a lot of things that go with that. So it's just not housing. There's an effect that it's causing, especially in the Black community, with us psychologically. And I want to know what the city is going to do to protect us, because everywhere I look, there's credits given to people that are not from here, that come here and just use this as a business. And then the people that have really survived in Grand Rapids, they're not given an opportunity for housing based on credit. And it's discouraging. It's just discouraging to see. And also, the marijuana, I want to discuss that because there's a pilot program going where you're testing at the roadside. But the testing can be used in a biased way because there's no way to actually tell what a person's tolerance is and how much they smoked, just that it's in their system. So I'm pretty concerned about that. I also am concerned about the safety on the southeast side because there were some situations, there were several incidents on Sunday where we were misinformed about a father and a son being shot to death, while a quarter of a block away, there was a white dismembered woman there. And then we find out that the perp is a fourth-time habitual offender. And I think that our safety is in question now. And I think that it's important to alert the community if you have somebody who's a fourth habitual offender and they're a threat to us, that we be alerted, no different than if they were a pedophile moved into our neighborhood. And I'll see you next city commission meeting. 3 minutes is never enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Norman. Appreciate it. All right, others who wish to be heard?
Hello, my name is Teresa Phillips. I'm a resident of Grand Rapids Southeast Side. I would like to speak on the youth interaction policy. First, I'd like to say that studies have shown that children that face some kind of a trauma or sexual offense against them or any kind of offense against them later in life have issues with PSD, depression, and it just goes downhill from there. On section 4, A, where it says handcuffs should only be used as long as reasonable necessary, we need a time frame put on that. You know, because what's reasonable to me is not reasonable to you. So we're going to need a time frame for that. And on section B, officers shall notify the supervisor as soon as possible as reasonable to do so. We're going to need a time frame for that because, like I say, what's reasonable for me is not reasonable for you. And section 4, section C, where it says a supervisor shall respond to the scene as soon as possible. We're going to need a time frame for that because we can't be held up. You know, a child does not want to sit in cuffs any longer than they need to. And we're going to need an age limit of 12 because under the age of 12, they still have their innocence. And once we take away their innocence, you know, that's what makes them hard. And a child is already going to have to face a hard world. Let's not let them face it any sooner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Phillips. All right, others who wish to be heard?
Hello, my name is DeAndre Jones. First of all, I want to say I support the marijuana thing. My house, like I said, my house was raided a couple years ago for a stolen iPhone that I didn't take. I would take full responsibility if I was caught in the act of selling weed, but I wasn't. I have a maintaining a drug house and a possession for something that I was not caught for, and it's kind of hard to get off my record. I was able to get my medical marijuana license because I do have a couple problems. I also have PTSD, ADHD. I was diagnosed when I brought the weapon to school a couple years ago, so do know I suffer from that, but I could say that medical marijuana has helped me. Actually, one thing that I am working with is CBD oil, trying to get it to elders. I found out that CBD oil is actually a cure in 27 different countries, but in America it's just used as the product. It's really just thrown away, and it's something that can actually cure you leukemia and cancer. So this is something that is true. Also wanted to speak on the housing. It's kind of very hard to get housing. I'm also a volunteer for Grand Rapids Homes for All. That's something I'm very passionate about, getting people housing. Even if I don't have a house, if I can get somebody a house, that's important to me. Another issue, the kid that was and the father that was shot, that kid was actually in a program that I created when I won the partnership to create a program for nonviolence here in Grand Rapids. That kid is very dearly hurt. I hold him very dearly in my heart. He's a hard worker, and his name is Jaden Whitfield. I just wish that when I say that I'm not like a silent observer or anything, but from what I heard from the kids that was in my program, he was shot by somebody from Chicago. When I say that I'm from Chicago, I mean that I just know that that place is way tougher than it is here in Grand Rapids. Like, it is way tougher. A lot more people get shot. About 5 kids get shot on the block in Chicago, and I've been there and I've seen shootouts, and I just know how rough it is. That's why I continuously come here. That's why I push so hard in the community to try to end things like that, because there's no reason that that kid should have been graved. He wasn't, I thought he almost died. I was very misinformed. He was just grazed. He's actually back at home, but I'm just going to be working firsthand in the communities, advocating to try to end nonviolence. I will be at the Cure Violence meeting, any type of meeting to try to end nonviolence in this community, because this is one of the best communities to actually raise a family, and things like that shouldn't be happening. Like, kids in Chicago shouldn't be shooting kids in Grand Rapids, and so that's why I always try to advocate for that. So just know I will be just working firsthand with any organization to try to bring awareness to nonviolence and just in the communities all over, regardless of race.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Jones. All right, others wish to be heard?
Hello, my name is Jeremy Drew, Executive Director of Link Up, resident of 3rd Ward. Just want to also speak about the youth interaction policy with the Grand Rapids Police Department. As many of you know, the original youth interaction policy came out as a result of a couple incidents in the city of Grand Rapids in 2017 regarding where children were handcuffed by the Grand Rapids Police Department and with guns pointed at them. In response to that, a policy was adopted that was supposed to address these issues in light of what expressed community's concerns were. This past fall, we had 2 more incidents in which, after that original policy was put in place, youth were again handcuffed at gunpoint by Grand Rapids Police Department. Youth that had no weapons on them, that although they were accused by anonymous callers or in a situation where they fit a description supposedly of potentially being dangerous, they fully complied with everything the officers were telling them. They acted in a way that really anybody should and ought to respond when police were approaching them, and yet, despite all those situations, they were still handcuffed by a police department. Significant community members came out and expressed concerns that the youth interaction policy was not effective in addressing the situation, that we still did not have a police department that's acting the way the community thinks a police department ought to act. The revised policy that is being put in place right now continues to leave those same gaps in place that were there before. It still does not call for an age limit by which the Grand Rapids Police Department will stop handcuffing children. Really, the language in the handcuffing section is exactly the same as it was before, with the addition of a reference to a Supreme Court situation that happened in 2011, which really was taking precedent during the old precedent, old youth policy as well. The additional language about an intentionality of removing cuffs is good and should be in the policy, but the absence of a specific age included in the policy goes against the recommendations of the 21st Century Policing, that when they came and looked at Grand Rapids in response to racialized policing that was happening here, they did recommend that we adopt a age of 12 in our policy, and I think community has been saying that repeatedly as well, and I think that it is, Grand Rapids Police Department is really missing an opportunity to build trust with the community by adopting that policy right now. I think that they are undermining the efforts that have really otherwise been going forward to try to listen and adopt that by refusing to take that in place. They're really reducing the safety of the officers by not listening to what community has said, and adopting an age is really important to be included in this policy. So I guess I asked you to look back at that policy and really ask the question of why it is that we cannot commit to stop handcuffing children in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. All right, others who wish to be heard?
Martha Cooper, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and that was beautiful. He said everything I could possibly say. So we know that the city has trouble with trust, okay? And I came to Link Up tonight because I heard we were going to be looking at this policy. And I looked at this policy and I can see that it's a whole lot of words with a whole lot of holes in it. You know, there are words that are very arbitrary, like what's reasonable. There are words, you know, like I think that if you're even going to just, like, no kids get guns pointed at them or anyone else until a person is ready to shoot that gun. Now, if somebody's got a police gun pointed at them, they pretty much should figure they're going to be dead if they do anything, because that's just wrong. You don't do that. You don't pull a gun on kids. So your policy did not satisfy the community, and so you're still going to have trust issues. And now I moved to housing. So I went to, I'm a member of Grand Rapids Homes for All, and I went to the rollout. It's been a couple weeks. I've been really going through some stress in my own life. But as I said, I will not quit on this issue. So I was looking at, I remember when Mr. Sanchez, the Housing Commission, got up and suggested the rental readiness program. And I thought, what a ridiculous thing. Then I see, and you know, because you're not going to fix people's debt for them, what's this program really going to do? Then I got a hold of a piece of paper and read all the way through it, talking about the rental readiness program. And it talked about who's eligible for this program. And it says Grand Rapids residents at 80% of AMI. It doesn't say up to 80%, it says at. So I looked at that and I thought, oh, seems to me like that only includes people at 80%, and I don't see those people really having too much struggle, some, considering how bad the rents are rising, with being ready to rent. It's the people that are making 60% and 30% that are, and I'm going to speak to what LaDonna said, because I've been giving this a lot of thought. What made Grand Rapids a really great city that everybody wanted to come to was the community ethic that we have here. We had neighborhood associations, we have activists, we have artists. When this city wasn't rich, we had a rich community. When people are displaced, what happens in the black community and white communities is that there's nobody home to see what's going on in the neighborhood because old people can't afford to live here anymore. There's no, I knew these people for the last 5 years and they're my neighbors, and when I need help, I got my neighbors, because their neighbors just got pushed out. And when you got an older person and you need to live close by so you can go and help your mother when they get old.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you. Your time's up. Thanks. All right, others wish to be heard?
Do better with more than 3 minutes of me.
Hi, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Juanita, and I wanted to speak on the youth interaction policy. I'm a mother that have children that was affected by interactions with Grand Rapids Police, and I'm not happy with the wording of the revised policy. It states about officers encountering children who they think may have a weapon. Well, my children, they thought my children had a weapon, and nothing in that policy says do anything different than what the officers did. with the interaction with my children just by their thoughts. So I think that should be looked at a little better, and also it speaks on safety in the policy, but it doesn't say whose safety, who should be ensured to be safe first. If it's the officers that are hired to protect and serve the community, are they there to protect our children, or they are to protect themselves first? The way it's written is like they're protecting themselves, and I think children should be protected first. The mental stability of the child, as well as any sorts of them being harmed. And also the police task force meeting, excuse me, I'm nervous, but
Doing fine.
the recommendations that were given. You guys hired a guy to help with the recommendations, and it was 38 that were worked on. The guy recommended 2 additional recommendations on that night, and the easiest one was for the police to recognize that they had caused mistrust with the community and apologize or to own up to it. And I think that was the easiest one out of all of the recommendations that could be done and that have not been done yet. So how do the community feel that any of the other recommendations are actually being sought after? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Anita. Thanks for coming. All right, others who wish to be heard?
Good evening. My name is April Van Solicum. I have been a resident of Grand Rapids for over 8 years. My children attend our local GRPS school. I volunteer for the school PTCC and for my neighborhood association. I am invested in Grand Rapids. I have been successfully operating retail stores in West Michigan for over 15 years. Recently, I was made aware of an opportunity to own and operate my own retail business in Grand Rapids, a medical marijuana provisioning center. I have secured funding, I have begun my state application, and I have qualified property under contract. My plans for the property include significant beautification and benefit to the neighborhood. I believe I am the type of person the city would like to see operating one of these businesses. I am honest, hardworking, I care about the community, and I am good to my employees. I want to build strong relationships with my neighbors and give back to the community I live and work in. But because I am local and was only interested in working close to home, I am not as advanced in the licensing process as people coming from elsewhere in the state or country. This opportunity just was not on my radar before this year. I am fully capable of succeeding in my business plan if only given the opportunity. If the City Council goes forward with requiring state pre-qualification, my opportunity will be over. The time, money, and effort I have spent to date will be wasted simply because I won't be able to compete with the pre-qualified out-of-towners. So please consider who you would like to see operating these businesses. If you want local community members like myself, you need to remove the pre-qualified requirement. If an applicant has at least submitted the state application, that should be enough for you to take them seriously. When it comes to serving the community, it shouldn't matter if there are a few extra applications to process. This is not such an easy or inexpensive process that just anyone can walk in off the street and turn in an application. Any local resident who has invested their time, energy, and finances is worthy of your consideration. And remember, if you disqualify an entire group of applicants, you will also be disqualifying their properties, which may have been a better choice for the city. The big players from out of town are going to come in here with their big money and propose the most ideal locations that can start making them money right away. Local people know the neighborhoods. We know which blighted buildings could be remade and surrounding communities improved, and we care enough about Grand Rapids to make those choices. If you disqualify us, those applications will never even come before you for you to make that choice. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, April. All right, others who wish to be heard?
Marvin Yono. I've been a local businessman here in Grand Rapids since 1999. Back in July, I started securing properties for the use of provisional centers and/or grows in Grand Rapids with the intention of leasing said property back to GR locals. I know about this industry, and I know what happens in cities that launch an ordinance. The cost of real estate goes up, okay? And anybody with the advanced notice will have an advantage. There's only one other city that has adopted the ordinance the way you are adopting it, and that is Flint. And that is only because they have an illegal dispensary provisional center problem there. Owasso adopted anybody that can make it. Secure real estate, secure funding, secure counsel, submit their application. That is a qualified. You're not going to have that many extra applications to look at. But today, we don't have any Kent County pre-qualified or fully vetted residents. You do a disservice to the city and the people of Grand Rapids if you keep that ordinance the same. Business 101, you said break it down like a 7-year-old. I don't go to open a liquor store. The first thing I do, I have to go in and I have to acquire the real estate. So I can go to the state and say, here you go. I've got a piece of real estate. I want to open a liquor store. The same would apply in this case. I can't go to the state and say, hey, I want to open a provisional center in Grand Rapids, but I haven't secured real estate. Let me get through this part first. It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. Business 101, brick and mortar business, secure the real estate first. You're focused more, and there's plenty of real estate that could use revitalization that you will miss the opportunity on. I have plenty of it secured, and I have a great development plan for that real estate. You will take away that opportunity. I beg you to reconsider. There is only one city. You will be so different. There's only one city, and they put that in place for, again, reasons that they can't control. There's a bunch of illegal dispensaries in Flint. So they plugged that into the ordinance, and there it went. Owasso said, hey, if you can get the real estate, you've got the funding, you pass muster. Show us you submitted your application, and we'll give you an opportunity. Here you give Grand Rapids folks no opportunity, zero. You can take the Vita and almost scrap it. I've been here for 20 years. I didn't just come here to get into the medical marijuana business. I've had over a $2 million a year payroll with over 50 employees in the city of Grand Rapids. I've done a lot for the city. I love this city. So I really, really urge you to, Commissioner Lanier is 100% correct. You should remove that, and you should give people an opportunity. You will not, and Landon will not be overwhelmed with applications. He'll have a better opportunity, and that gives you the ability to say, hey, we chose this location, this is a site that's approved, and in the event that person doesn't pass muster with the state, at least you've received the ability to qualify the site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your consideration.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Hello, Russ Olmsted, West Side, Grand Rapids. Been a while since I've been here. Been busy. My apologies. Glad to be back, though. Good to see you again. Yeah, good to see you all, too. First thing I want to talk about is about the new youth interaction policy. Although I believe this is the third iteration since it was first conceived, I think that there's still a lot more work that needs to be done on this. And every time that there is this opportunity for the police department to come forward with a policy that could help to work to restore some of the trust that have been eroded over the years, they keep not listening to what the community wants. I think that what is missed in all of this is what is the purpose of the policy. From the community's perspective, the purpose of the policy is to make sure that kids are not handcuffed at gunpoint. I don't think that that is the purpose of the policy from the police department's perspective. And that key, I think that is key in why we are not finding something that is acceptable to the community. This provision does not prevent that from happening. This policy does not prevent that from happening. And until we get something that actually does create that outcome, the desired outcome of the community that the community is demanding, we're going to continue to have distrust. We're going to continue to have any sort of effort to maintain trust between community and the police or build trust between community and the police constantly be eroded by these types of issues. I hope that this will be re-examined again and that we can go through another fourth iteration to get this right, because all it's going to take is one instance of an already stressful situation getting worse and somebody dying, and that's it. That's it. It's not all of the backlash that will happen from the community and the loss of life, there is no restoring trust after that. There is no coming back from that. And we have an opportunity to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I hope that we seize it. The second thing that I would like to talk about is the marijuana zoning ordinance that was discussed tonight. I understand that the ordinance is already decided as far per vote to this evening, but something that I would that maybe the city could look into to help alleviate some of the things that were discussed. I don't know if it's already been set up, but some of the tax revenue that's coming in to be diverted to a program that you could get together with people in the community to try to create an opportunity for communities of color and for women ownership and local ownership inside of here. Connect them with resources, connect them with investment opportunities, connect them with ways to get through these types of processes. Using these resources for that, I think, would be possibly a good way to rectify some of the damage that's been done to communities of color through marijuana policy. So, thank you.
Thanks, Russ. All right, others who wish to be heard? Hi.
Buenas tardes. My name is Lorena Aguayo Marquez, and I'm here to talk about 4 things. So I'm just going to echo what Jeremy said about the youth intervention policy. It really is undermining the community. Children should not be handcuffed, and we do need to set that in the policy that children should not be handcuffed. If we need to put an age, we need to put an age for that. So the other thing I come to is I'm very excited about the proposed human rights ordinance. I'm very excited that the Community Relationship Commission took that to the next level and is right now in the city attorney's desk. So I'm excited about that. So I wanted to know that. And also, I was during voting, I was a poll watcher, and I realized a lot of things that for a community that says that they're very inclusive and equitable, there wasn't any material to include the Spanish-speaker community in the voting booth. It wasn't delivered beforehand or doing that. If it wasn't for a call to the community, volunteers came out and did some outreach to make sure that voters were able to understand the ballot, and because it was in English, no ballots were provided or examples of that prior to that. Or how to vote in Spanish. So as we continue with the strategic planning and about communication with the Latino community, the Spanish-speaking community, it's very important that we include them in all aspects of life, and especially when it comes to voting. The other point that I have is the expanded meter parking, expanded hours to people to pay for meter parking after 5 and weekends. That is going to exclude certain populations. Most likely people of color who already struggle to come to downtown for events. That's another added cost for them. Think about this weekend, the tree light, right? If there was meter parking, a lot of people were not going to make it. And I know that a lot of community people did not come to that because that's a big issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your input on all 4 of those issues. Hi, welcome.
Hello, I'm Von Ruff once again. I'm going to talk about the youth interactions and the medical marijuana. Last week, 2 weeks ago, Commissioner Moody said, make sure you come up here with facts. Well, from what I could see, we had witnesses of 2 people come up here talk about guns being 2 kids' heads. I guess that is a fact, I'm sure. There's a mother here that her kids that had guns put to their head. This youth thing, I mean, it's so wide open. Like, this like a football field. Like, I don't understand. How are you going to notify the supervisor before you notify the parent? Like, the parent should be notified first. It's a kid. They're not an adult. They're not over 18. They're 17 below. I mean, a responsible time frame for the supervisor to get there to release the kid from custody or handcuffs. I mean, what are you going to do? Take all year? Because that's what you guys do when you got an emergency and a person like dying. So you guys take all year to release a kid? Like, why are you going to handcuff a kid? Put him in a car, call his parent, let the parent get there, take the kid home. I'm sure you guys used to do that, 50 years ago maybe, 60, 70 years ago, maybe 80 years ago, I don't know. But you guys used to do that, I'm sure. Oh, then this whole thing about officers should not display a firearm on a youth unless the officer has a fear for their safety. You're an officer. You do training. You have like what? A gun, handcuffs, a nightstick, mace. That's like 4 different weapons. You're telling me you're scared of a child, or is it because he's a black child you're scared of her? Oh wait, there was an incident with the little girl. She was a black female, so you're scared of a black female? Like, come on now. You need that much training? Like, you guys need a lot of training if you can't take care of a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 17-year-old, and you're what, 30 years old, 5'9", 5'10", or higher? Like, it needs to be, yeah, this is just, like, pitiful. I was one of those kids, 13 years old, going to juvenile, getting handcuffed, being targeted by the officers and stuff like that. I feel like that's part of my PTSD today. That's why I need medical marijuana. Now, if I got to go to Lansing to get medical marijuana, that's going way out this district. Why wouldn't you put medical marijuana businesses here in a city that's owned by the city, people from the city? That's like keeping the money inside the city rather than people coming from Cali or Denver to bring their business here, and then they're gonna take that money right back to Cali or Denver. Once you keep the money here in the city, these people coming here trying to say, hey, I want my business here in the city, they're gonna keep their money here in the city. I'm sure of it. Nice day.
Thank you. All right, others wish to be heard?
Good evening, Robert Metzger, East Grand Rapids, Michigan, primarily 312 Prospect Avenue Northeast. Good news, I am not here to talk about the traffic light at Prospect in Michigan. But in a related matter, something that's come to my attention and I thought it worthy of bringing to the commission so it can be addressed. Hastings and Lafayette, the new proposed traffic signal there, right now they've got some temporary stop signs with simple red flags. I myself have blown through those on at least 3 occasions. I've talked to many of my neighbors as well as business people in the neighborhood. They've also had similar encounters, a couple of close misses with pedestrians. And I was going to request that perhaps you could have some flashing, battery-operated flashing lights installed, because it's not your typical residential street, and I don't think it's got adequate signaling. Perhaps, based on my experience so far this year with the city, maybe we need to address some flow charts as far as fresh eyes on such matters, because it seems we have something falling through the cracks as far as public safety. I guess that would address that. The only other comment I have related to the marijuana aspects that are taking place in the city going forward, I haven't heard it, and perhaps it's because I wasn't here, but I was going to ask that the same level of enforcement in regards to open containers also pertain to use of marijuana down public thoroughfares anywhere that public may be. So as far as us sharing the environment, I'm a libertarian, perfectly happy to see that this was passed. I just don't want to have to smell it or look at it. So hopefully that's something, since we have enforcement problems with the city, somebody can at least put that on deck for conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, anyone else who wishes to be heard? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close that public comment period, and I'll turn to my colleagues, and I'll start over here with Commissioner Jones.
Just want to thank everyone for coming out, for your comments, whether you were for or against, whether you were just commenting on your thoughts around the youth policy. And I'm just very appreciative for the opportunity for folks to be able to speak to these issues. So thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner O'Connor?
I just want to thank my colleagues tonight. Thank you for allowing us to get to some finality on a couple of issues that have been very much part of our consciousness for a very long time. And so it's, you know, I know there's folks on both sides of both issues, and I think that's part of the joy of what we do is, you know, I don't think we ever get to make everybody happy, but I hope that we did our work as policymakers to find as much consensus as we could, which I think we did. And, you know, these will become policy in the law of the city. And, you know, if they work, I hope they work as we planned. And if they don't, I hope we have the wherewithal to, you know, amend them in the future to try to make them better. And I'm confident that we'll do that.
Thank you. Commissioner?
I'd just like to thank everyone for coming out tonight and sharing your public comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Repart?
Oh, all the way down. I thought I had
Oh,
another
sorry.
minute. No, it's fine, it's fine. First of all, I would thank everybody for coming out. I also want to thank the city staff today for putting together a strong strategic planning session, and look forward to continuing that conversation. I just wanted to respond real quickly to Dwayne, who asked a question about the pilot that we approved for zero lot lines. That's a pilot until the master plan, and then we'll revisit that at that point. And so that'll be revisited during the master plan. And last, I want to thank my colleague, Commissioner Lanier, for the pushback. And I just think that that's a good thing. And so I'm rooting for the same thing as you, and I hope that this will get there. I did get assurance that any pre-qual before April 12th will be considered. So that's 5+ months from now yet. But I do want to just say thanks for pushing back and making sure that we're considering everything on that.
Thanks.
I just want to thank everybody for coming out, and all your comments and everything that you've said has been heard. Thank you.
Commissioner Kelly?
Well, I echo those thanks, and Dwayne wants you to know that's on vacant land. I think we communicated that as well. And I just want you to know that we've all struggled as a commission, and so did the Planning Commission with this whole situation of the MyVita and the pre-qual. Unfortunately for us, the state, we are an arm of the state. This is a two-step process, and so we recognize that if you don't have state qualification, local won't matter. So that was certainly something we had to consider in terms of that and the costs to our taxpayers for going through the process here, and as well as for those who pay to go through that process and might not be successful in the end. So we certainly don't want to see people losing money, but it was a genuine effort on our part to try to do everything we could in terms of local benefit, because we recognize that historically that there have been marginalized communities that have suffered from past policy. And that's why, as onerous as it may be to those who are going into the business, we have this MyVita in place. And of course, we can always revisit policy. This is, to some extent, an experiment. We've looked at other communities and we've done our best. And I too appreciate Commissioner Lanier's pushback. Thanks.
City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank the Commission for their feedback today during the planning session, also for helping advance some pretty big issues that we've been discussing long before my arrival and since my arrival regarding housing as well as medical marijuana. And also I want to thank the community for their work in providing us perspective and feedback on the youth interaction policy. We did go back and make an effort to try to reframe the policy. What you'll find is in there will be de-escalation kind of strategies, as well as alternatives to just using handcuffs. But there is not a hard age requirement. For some, there's not enough in the policy. For others, there's too much in the policy. And what I would ask is that you would just allow us to try and train to it. My expectation is that the outcomes will be different based on the intentionality of having more training and dialogue with the officers around that. So I want to thank you, though, again, for the feedback. That's part of the public policy process. We continue to find ways to engage with the community even better.
Thank you. City Attorney? Okay. And I'm going to end by thanking everyone as well. We and all of my colleagues, as well as City Manager, for leading a great strategic planning process today. And I'm going to end with a public apology to my colleague, Commissioner Lanier. In no way do I want you to feel like I'm trying to censor or have your voice not heard. So my apologies. Yeah. And with that, we are adjourned. Have a good night.